Welcome to Reroute Reflections, where we share our thoughts and insights about relationships, wellness, and business. We're your hosts, Becca and Andrew. We've been married for 10 years and have plenty of knowledge and experience in our relationships, the wellness industry, and the business world. Grab a coffee and let's chat.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, welcome back.
Episode 9.
Yeah.
Here we go.
We're almost at 10. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts, and we're still having a lot of fun with it, so
yeah.
That's great.
And this week, we're recording even later. It is now Sunday afternoon, and This episode is coming out, Monday.
Yeah, and you know what? I feel like I'm just going to accept it. This is just what it's going to be like, you know? And yesterday we did have the chat where we were like, oh, we should do it. But we were just tired. It was a really long week. We'll get into that a bit. But yeah, we just needed a Saturday.
And I don't think, our episode last week was all about burnout, and that doesn't just go away in a week. So
before we dive into today's topic, let's talk about our week. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, nothing new.
Right,
Same old. Work, study, sleep. Sometimes
Repeat. Find
some time to eat in between there, and yeah, work, study, sleep.
Basically, the whole week is like that for you. It's like you come home, but you've gotten into a routine now. You're not studying at home. You're starting to try to find ways to study back at like work or finding a coffee shop and stuff.
Yeah, that's been a struggle though, because I really don't want to stay at work because if I stay in my office, then I can easily get distracted about like actual work things to do.
Yeah.
And I've tried going to a few cafes like nearby work, but they close at 5:00. So I'm like, okay, I get like a good hour.
It's so weird.
And that's it. And I'm like,
I guess
that's
that kind of
weird.
makes sense because you're like near downtown and most people are commuting away from that area around.
Yeah.
So, but still,
and then
that's
like
crazy.
Anywhere else in that area is just so hard to get to, or there's like minimal parking, and I'm like, So I'm trying to figure out a routine, but also I think we're 3 weeks away now from my exam, so
yeah, so you're just gonna keep it and keep what you're doing and see what happens.
Try to keep what I do. Most of the time I'm just cramming it all in on the weekends.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. I feel like this week was a little bit easier for you to find time to do that studying because I did have quite a few like late meetings this week.
Yeah.
In a couple of days I was in meetings until 10 o'clock at night.
I know, yeah.
Yeah, we got some training happening in Alberta and I'm in Toronto, so we work a 2-hour difference. We're training a lot of volunteers, so our training has to be after hours for them, but that just means it's much later for me. And yeah, that was a challenge to stay up all night, especially for days like I would start work at 8:30 and then having to stay and work. One day I had a nice little break between, like after 5 to just relax before, but that was almost worse.
I was gonna say, yeah, sometimes that's worse because then you get like
you're
tired and
you're
relaxed.
Like, I just don't want to do anything else, and now you're like having to be on with a bunch of people, which is really tough. But yeah, and then I think for me, now that the weather's starting to get better, I want to do a little bit more coffee chats, meeting up with people. That's what I really like to do, just stay connected. So I've reached out to a few people who, I've had like on my mind of like how to reach out to them. So we haven't talked in so long. Some of them are in areas that I'm really interested in, so I want to get a sense of like how things are in that industry. And also, I'm actually starting to think about maybe looking for teaching opportunities and just at some local colleges in the area, and reached out to a buddy of mine who does that. And just to get some tips and advice on how to get started and what I should do.
And that's something you've been talking about wanting to do for years. Like, it's something you've always wanted to do, is get into teaching of some capacity. And
yeah, I think, you're right. There was a part where I did try to apply for positions, and then because I didn't have my master's finished yet, that was what prevented me from getting a position. And then I let it go, and then one of my clients asked me to do a workshop. Like 3-4 hour workshop, and I think that's when putting the material together and the training and all that kind of stuff, it just kind of like reignited that passion a bit.
Yeah.
The other thing this week was really just trying to put to practice all the stuff that we were talking about during last week's, right? So I think I'd give myself like a 60% on that. I did start playing Pokemon Gold like I did say I would. I didn't play a lot of it, but I did spend some time. Given that I was working so much the first couple of days during the week, I was glad I could find some time to do that.
And I was very proud of you because you actually took Friday off from work.
I did.
You had a whole bunch of late nights in a row, and then Friday you were like, oh, I think I have a couple things to do, but I won't have to work with this client or that. And I was like, oh, that's good. And I came home and you were like, I didn't do any work today. And I was like, yes.
Yeah, it was really good because I got a chance to do some of the stuff that I not had the chance to do last week, get my hair cut, you know.
Yeah.
I did get a chance to take Luna on for a really long walk and catch up with a few people.
You went to the gym. You had
it was a great day.
Great self-care day.
Yeah, great self-care day, but it was so busy. Felt like I was like either there's always something going on. Yeah, up until the time you got home.
Yeah. There's that fine balance of cramming your day full of quote-unquote self-care activities, but then it's so busy that you're like, I might even relax.
I know. It was in that kind of space. So I think this week I really want to do a little bit of a better job, really focus on some of the things that I had committed to, like journaling, meditating, that kind of stuff. I really just got to do it. I don't know why this is so hard for me. But I really need to start, and I'd like to start reading again. It's been a while.
You were reading like every night before bed for a little while.
Yeah, I don't know what's happened.
That's a good routine, yeah.
I got to get back into that for sure.
So what are we talking about today? So
today we're going to be talking about switching jobs, switching careers, starting new things. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this was one of the benefits of actually us recording so close to when we're actually publishing the podcast is that we get to think about or talk about some of the things that are like really present in our lives right now.
Yeah.
And I think everyone I'm talking to is talking about, I'm thinking about switching, or it's been really difficult for me to find a new job. And I was just like, maybe we should just give
it a chat. We both done lots of switching around and jobs and careers and...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And we got a lot of advice because we were both managers. I myself have switched, careers, or I've had about 10 different jobs, in 15 years of work. I've had I've moved around quite a bit. And so today I think we'll talk about just a bunch of different topics: resumes, cover letters, networking, how to use social media. Because I still think people aren't using platforms that we have as efficiently as possible. And I just want to give my advice on a few things because I don't really get a chance to share it all that much. And I've got some really not strong opinions, but I do have some opinions on a lot of these different topics that are not necessarily the popular opinions. So I just want to share them.
And I think like having gone through so many changes yourself, now you can look back on it and be like, if I had only known back then to do X, Y, Z, like maybe it would have been a little easier, right? So
yeah, I'm old as hell. So yeah, I'll get started. So I think just maybe I'll give a little bit of a background around like the type of work I've done in the past. So most of my career was spent at BMO, so Bank of Montreal. So I'd worked basically almost 13 years with the bank. Started there as a teller, CSR, and moved my way up into the corporate strategy group before deciding to leave as an independent consultant, which is what I've been doing now for almost 2 years. As I mentioned at BMO, I worked 9 different jobs. So I counted them because there's so many of them.
Oh my God.
And they've spanned into 2 main areas, so risk management and change management. I started out in risk, had a lot of experience within the personal banking side of the business. So worked with the contact center, worked with the branch, also worked in operations, all within personal banking. That's your basic, like you yourself, like mortgages, loans, checking accounts, credit cards, like that kind of stuff, not like business banking or wealth management or anything like that. So that was the area I focused in. And of those 13 years, I'd say it was about 7 years of that. So over half of it was in change management. So once I found change management, I stuck with it.
My jam.
Yeah. And so now, having worked as an independent consultant, I'm almost at that 10-year mark of, so like 9 years of experience in the space, and really, really enjoying it. As I mentioned, I was a people leader in that time as well, so I did have a chance to have an employee and see what that was all about, which I enjoyed, actually. I really did like it. And yeah, just switched a lot of times.
I think you were that guy who's every 2 years, you'd get bored and you'd move.
Yeah.
Maybe even closer to like a year and a half, and you'd be like, all right, I'm ready for a change. Like, I've reached where I need to be.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that a bit, because there were, and thank you all for submitting your questions.
Oh, yeah. We actually got quite a lot on Instagram. Yeah.
We did. So that was actually really great. I was really impressed with that, because we've been talking about how we want to do this segment, but we want to give you guys an opportunity to share like your questions with us so that we can answer them instead of us having to create them on our own.
We didn't have to make them up this time.
Yeah, so this was really great. So I'm really looking forward to that. I mean, that's something that we're gonna talk about a little bit, just around like, when do you know it's time to move? Yeah. And so for me, it just so happened it was always 2 years, but it wasn't like I was adamant about every 2 years do it. It was my
the feeling
perspective,
and the perspective that you
of
had,
like if I got to this point, then it was time for me to leave, and that always just happened to be every 2 years. I'm not a stranger to side hustles either. I think I've started so many.
You started when you were a teenager.
Yeah, and none of them worked out. So
I mean, they each had a pretty good run for a little bit.
I mean, they all taught me something, right?
Yeah.
And I think that was what I got out of it, but not to a point where I could take the side hustle and turn it into a full-time gig. Like that just never happened, because it never met like the criteria in my head around, okay, this is getting me to that, I'm ready to take it to the next level. It just never got there.
And I don't know if you ever even had it set in your head that I need this side hustle to turn into a full-time gig one day. I think you always just had the side hustle to like make a little extra money or like do something fun on the side. And I think that was probably part of it.
It was part of it. I think most of the side hustles though were just me trying to get experience in a space that I didn't have experience in.
Yeah.
And so that was a lot of it. Like starting out, like when I was a teenager, it was landscaping. I also, shoveling snow, landscaping. I did try the content creator angle for a little bit. So
corporate vegan, if anyone remembers.
It's a way back playback for sure. Yeah. And that was after I became vegan. It was like getting all of this, like just questions in general. And it was really difficult, like we were talking about, when you go to a restaurant with your team, like how do you...
And so that happens a lot in the corporate world, right? Where you guys order lunch in, or you're going out for drinks after work with them and getting some snacks. And I think it comes up a lot, and that's where you saw like that entry
gap,
to market or that gap.
There was like a gap to fill in the market for sure. And so it was like, it was niche enough that I was like, oh, this might actually work if I can, get it marketed properly. And
I still remember your profile picture. It was you in one of your business suits.
Oh, yeah.
And you were answering a banana phone.
Oh, I think I definitely have them. So we'll pop them up on Instagram for this week. Yeah, for sure.
Classic.
That was hilarious. Yeah, so I did that for a while, and then just got to the point where things got busy. I needed to look at, I think I might have started my MBA at that time, and then I was like, I need to take something away.
Yeah.
And so that was the thing that I had to take away. And do I regret that? Not really. Like, I got what I needed out of it, and then I moved on. I've done so many things. Even when I first started working, I even was like at the bank. I think after I started working at the contact center, I was selling cruise ships. Ships.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was selling cruise ships at 21 years old. $36 million cruise ships. No, I was selling cruises at Expedia. So they're like, you're an independent contractor with them, and you just sell and you make commission off of every sale you made. Yeah, it was a great thing. I was like, I had a lot of, at the contact center, bless you, Strider. There was a lot of people like in my team and like the other areas, because it was like kind of skewed a little bit older. So they all loved cruises. And I was like, hey, like, what if I sold you cruises? So it actually worked out really well for me. But I always did that. Like, I started landscaping because I was in Canadian Tire, and I found like there was that referral stream.
And that gap of people buying all the stuff and then not really knowing how to implement it, or like wanting some help with it. And you're like, I'll help, sure.
Yeah, 100%. Oh my God, I tried to start like a vegan winter coat business with a buddy of mine.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh, all these ideas.
And then once COVID happened,
then
I decided to try to do something with Pokemon.
That's when you really got back into it again.
Yeah, so I tried, initially was like a trading card collecting app that I tried to build, and that didn't go anywhere. And then PokeXword was what I decided to start, and that's something I'm still doing. I'm such a huge fan of side hustles. I think everyone should have one.
I think it's fun. I think it's like you said too, it just teaches you a new skill, and if it's something you're like interested in, it's fun to really invest your time into something and make it like a side hustle to really get like the full experience of what it's like and learn everything you can.
100%. I wouldn't add anything else to that. That's exactly what I see a side hustle is. And if it turns into something more, great. But if it doesn't, you got something out of it, so it's not like you wasted your time. I don't think. Ever.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So how about you?
So I guess I moved around a lot in jobs and everything before my like dietitian career. I think we've talked about it in like episode 1, but I guess straight out of university, I was a personal trainer for a while, and then I was a barista at Starbucks, and that was where I found the trajectory for my career there. So I was promoted to a shift supervisor, and then an assistant manager, and then a store manager. And then I became a flagship store manager, and I also became a store manager trainer. So I would train other managers for their role. I think after I'd quit Starbucks, and I think we'll talk about this in a little more detail as well, but I think some of the things that I did in order to help prepare me for entering the world as a dietitian was just like small roles or volunteer jobs in between while I was in school. I did things like I was a dietary aide at a reactivation center, which essentially is helping as part of the kitchen staff, just helping ensure the menu's up to code and getting patients their meals on time and things like that. I was also a campus volunteer when I was at Brescia. And then I had lots of different volunteer roles. So I volunteered with a tech company. So I actually helped them create their databases for different foods or allergens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was really cool.
It was really interesting. Yeah, they were a startup. Mm-hmm. They're launched now, I think. They're called Heali, Heali. Mm-hmm. And essentially it was an app that would allow you to enter whatever dietary restrictions you had. And then I think it was something along the lines of being able to like scan different menus when you were out, and it would flag which options would be best for you given all your dietary needs. So
it wouldn't connect you to like dietitians for like help and stuff.
And then if you found that you were struggling, it would easily connect you to a dietitian, like either in the moment or you could set up an appointment with them to talk things over. So it was really interesting. Yeah. And then what else? Then I did volunteering more directly with the dietitian. I was helping out with body composition testing and helping them like input. So if a patient comes to you or a client comes to you with a food recall, what they've been eating the last few days, I would be the one to enter all that information into a system so we could spit out like a nutrition report to see what the overall patterns are, if you're missing anything in your diet, and then that way when you meet with your dietitian, you can have a more focused, individualized appointment to say, you're eating a lot of this or not a lot of that. Let's fine tune.
Yeah, that was a really cool job for you. I think it was great for you to, before the internship, to be able to actually like get a sense of what the dietitian role, before the master's, what that role would look like.
What like a private practice dietitian role would look like. Yeah. And I think what helped with that volunteer role too was when I was doing the body composition testing, I would be one-on-one with their client. So I was the one who had like 15 minutes, 20 minutes with a client, and we would talk about their their composition results and what that meant for their goals. Just like very general, very like high level, because obviously I was not like a qualified dietitian yet, but obviously we want to give them like a little bit of insight about what these results mean right now, so they're not like panicking before their appointment comes.
Yeah.
But I think that also helped me build that confidence in myself, because I like on paper knew that I had the transferable skills of being a people person, being able to talk to people, being able to like build that rapport with people because of all the experience I had at Starbucks. But when you're translating it into a new industry, it can be like hard to see that unless you're actually doing it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what that volunteer job really allowed me to see, was like I can be very good at just instantly building rapport with people and making them feel comfortable. And especially with that kind of situation, like they're often getting down into a bathing suit and you just met them. So you need to really like build that comfort level with them at first, and get them comfortable so that we can get the testing done, and then we can talk about it afterwards and reassure them like nothing is good or bad, it's just some numbers, and having just like that general talk. So why don't we get into some questions, and maybe some more like details will come up.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
I think there's one question I want to ask you though. What was your favorite job? Like over, like, and I'll answer it too.
Is it super cheesy if I say my job right now?
100%, but that's okay if it's honest.
I love being a dietitian.
That's
like
great.
I love specifically working in clinical. Like
I can see your face light up. So.
I know. I feel so fulfilled. I feel like I'm an important member of the team. I feel like I'm actually having an impact on people's lives. I've had a lot of some really great patients this week who have given me really good feedback to say like, oh, I love that you come by more often. It's so nice to see you because you've got like that positive energy, and that's what I really need right now. And I'm like, oh, thanks. Like that's kind of my goal.
Yeah.
Working in a hospital is like everybody's running in and out of your room, and you're often getting bad news and you're feeling really crappy. And I want to be that person to go in and say, let's have a chat and just relax. Like, it's okay. Nothing's good or bad here. And I want to be that positive face for them.
Yeah,
and someone they look forward to chatting with, because I'm not going to give them bad news apart from we need to get you some more nutrition.
Right. And I mean, you didn't really talk about this, but I know when you were like doing your internship, you did it at the CSIO, which is the Canadian Sport Institute of Ontario, right? Nailed it. And then you also did, your time at Mount Sinai in the hospital setting.
Yeah.
And I know you were going back and forth between, do I do the sport route? Because that's always something you've talked about, doing the sport dietitian route, or go into the hospital. And then you were also considering doing like private practice as well.
And then that way
right?
I could kind of do everything. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So like I think you should talk a little bit about that.
Honestly, it was easiness of easiness of getting a job. Like, to be honest, being a dietitian working in sport is like super competitive because it's such a niche area. A lot of the sport dietitians out there are very experienced and they're already in those roles that like the dream jobs that you want. And it takes a lot more effort to get into it.
Were they athletes before usually, or are they not necessarily?
Yeah, most of the time, yeah.
Okay.
And I also just think the feedback that I heard a lot of the time is like, in order to start out in sport nutrition, like you need to almost start like voluntarily, like reaching out to your local league of whatever it was, hockey, soccer, whatever, and just offering to come in and do a chat for them, or like giving discounted prices to just get yourself out there, start getting your name known in like the teams in your area.
Right.
And then hopefully at some point you'll find someone to hire you. So it was just like, it's more work, it's more time, it's more effort. And I think with a clinical position, you're literally seeing a job posted, applying for it, doing an interview, hopefully getting it.
Right.
And it's like very familiar. And then if you get that kind of job, it's going to be a steady income. You're going to get benefits for sure.
Yeah.
It's just a lot more safe.
Yeah, and you're coming out of school, you want to get as much experience as you can in a short period of time, and that's, I feel like in a hospital setting you're getting so much like experience.
Yeah, and I also think it helps because of my exam coming up, like my registration exam, because being able to work in a clinical area, like nutrition care is like almost half of our exam material, I'm pretty sure, or like a good like 30% of the questions are going to be about nutrition care specifically.
Yeah.
So for me, I was like, if I'm able to land a job in clinical, like that alone is just going to be a really good like study environment where I don't even have to. And that's why I'm a little easier on myself during the week, because I'm like, technically I've been studying like all day. Like, do I really need to study more tonight?
Yeah. And I imagine the private practice option, I mean, that's not really necessarily off the table ever.
No, and I think it's just, it's like a middle ground between the sport nutrition and clinical. Like a lot of people might know, like I've set everything up for myself. I did a lot of work on my website. I've got appointment systems like up and running, and I'm like ready to jump into that. But I honestly just need more time in my life to take on more clients and do things like that. I think with the private practice, it's just about making that leap when I feel ready, I guess.
And it's always on too. I feel like there's a lot of opportunities that you can get that are part-time at hospitals. And if you got that, then you'd have more capacity to kind of take on clients as a private practice. And right now you're full-time, so that makes it difficult for you to take on clients.
Full-time and then studying the rest of the time. But what was your favorite job?
Oh, yeah, I totally forgot. So I think I had two really good jobs. I will pick one, I promise. But I do want to call them out. I think the first favorite job I had was at Canadian Tire, but at the time it was a great job. Don't get me wrong. The people were awesome. I loved my time there. I've done it for free, to be honest, just to hang out with the people there. It was incredible. But I think specifically the time when I was in landscaping and working at Canadian Tire, because I had that chance for the first time in my life to see the possibility of what like entrepreneurship would look like.
Right.
Sourcing referrals at like an incredibly young age and actually doing work for adults for money.
Yeah.
Thousands of dollars types of like jobs. And I was like 19. And so it was a lot of learning around like invoicing and billing and client relationships and making sure that you can do like a competitive analysis of like, what are people offering and like where do I need to price myself given my experience level and all that kind of stuff to be competitive.
Yeah.
And I got clients. Like I had people who I'm not talking about just mowing lawns. Like, they had me come out to resod their yard, retaining walls, pathways, and it was nothing like major, like no pond building or anything. Although somebody did ask me to do it, and I said no.
I was gonna say, you probably would have said no to that kind of thing.
Yeah, I was like, no, I'm not doing that. It was also really hard to get into this guy's backyard, so I was like, I couldn't get a bobcat through an excavator, so I'm like, no way, I'm not playing that game. Way too much work. Yeah, I was I was in softscape. That's like the term that they use. Like, nothing really heavy. So it was fun. I really enjoyed it. But that kind of shaped that whole, or gave me that entrepreneur bug. And then I think the other one was when I was in strategic initiatives. So that was my role as a strategic initiative manager at BMO. And I was working in the personal Salesforce effectiveness team. And so every 8 months, or we would have a new project. Every 6-8 months, it would be a new project. And I'd be working on different problems to solve. And it was the best time. I literally spent, I think, 4 or 5 years there. You spent a long
time there, yeah. That was your job before your last position, wasn't it?
No, I've had a few others before, but
okay.
I think it was just this idea of, I really love the change of pace every 6-8 months. That was my niche. I stayed in that role so long because every 8 months it was like I had a new job.
Yeah.
It was really cool.
That was definitely, yeah.
I think those two together basically shaped what I do now.
Entrepreneurship with change management, which gives you new projects to work on, new companies to see.
So my favorite job is the one I have now. But those are the jobs.
True, but those are the ones
that got me. Yeah, got me there. So let's dive into the question. Again, thank you for submitting these questions. Really appreciate it, everybody.
I know. Yeah, they're good too. So question number 1, how to structure your resume when changing industries. This one's a good one.
Yeah, I've done a lot of mentoring for kids coming out of school. I've been a mentor. I'm still a mentor with York University. I have been for several years now. And I get this question quite a lot. And I also am now a mentor with Dalhousie as well. So my alma mater. Yeah, I mean, I'm like old, so whenever you're old, you can become a mentor.
No.
But I mean, the only reason I say that is because, I've gotten this question a lot, and I've been able to kind of have a good perspective, and I've changed careers so many times. I could literally write resumes for my career as a side hustle, maybe. No, I think for a resume, I've got a few tips. I think a lot of the times I would see people always send in the same resume to different jobs, and I think that's a huge mistake. I think you do need to tailor that resume to the job. Especially nowadays with the systems that they use in order to filter out applicants, you need to make sure that your resume has all those keywords that they're looking for. So taking the keywords out of the job description and actually throwing them into your resume is something you need to do, and in order to do that, you need to make sure your resume is customized for the role that you're applying for, always. I am also more around focusing on the skills rather than the role that you did. What skills did you use when you were in this role to achieve an outcome that I think you should include in the resume? I don't want to, as a leader, I don't necessarily want to know, in this role, your responsibility is to lead and develop and execute on change management initiatives for projects impacting the personal sales force at the BMO Bank of Montreal. What does that actually mean? What skills did you do? What did you actually accomplish? So in my resume, you'll see things like very specific, quantifiable achievements. And I'll add numbers into it. Be I worked on an $18 million project in looking at trying to evolve the sales force roles from where they are today to where they needed to be. And in so doing, we achieved a 15% increase in sales revenue year over year. Things like that, I think, are really more important than saying what it is you do. That's, I think, where the context is going to be. But I tend to just focus on what I've actually achieved and the skills I've had to use in order to achieve those results.
Yes, I agree. And I'll say as well, because I'm someone who's drastically changed industries, that I applied all those same tips to myself. So, I hinted at before, trying to focus on those transferable skills that I had from Starbucks and how it would lend to me being a really great dietitian to hire. So, for example, when Andrew's talking about highlighting the skills versus the role, it's one thing for me to say, oh, I was a store manager at Starbucks. People would be like, okay, great. So, you made schedules, you hired people, you worked as a barista, like whatever. But I would actually highlight specific skills that I think transferred into some dietitian roles. So I would say I achieved 100% on our quality assurance and safety standards, and that includes food safety, store cleanliness, things like that, because that's demonstrating that I'm fulfilling that food service aspect of being a dietitian. Or even just talking about how world-class customer service skills that are the expectation at Starbucks easily translate into really good patient care. And having those soft skills of like empathy and being able to build rapport and have a conversation, make people feel comfortable. And I'll also say your tip about tailoring your resume was really important for me too, especially going into internships. So I customized my resume specifically for the CSIO. So I would focus on highlighting things like my kinesiology degree, my time as a personal trainer, my background in sport, what I did growing up in terms of different sports, and then obviously just highlighting things as a dietitian as well, to tie it all together. And then I made one that was more tailored towards working in a hospital or a clinical placement. So again, like focusing on those numbers or focusing on like those quality aspects that a hospital might be looking for, my operational excellence and being able to follow different standards and things like that. Yeah, I agree with all your tips, and I think, yeah, that's the most important thing to consider when like making a resume to change industries is think about all the experience you have and now what can you take in terms of those skills and apply it to a new role.
Yeah, I think only two other comments I'll make on this. I think the first one is just like the format of a resume. I think that varies quite a bit, and I think it does tie into the idea of tailoring your resume. Like, I've seen some pretty, like, fancy-looking resumes, right? Like, really, people are using, like, bar graphs and, you know, pie charts and stuff in their resume, and I'm like, wow. Do I feel like those are necessary? No, I don't think so. My resume is very, like, traditional. Like, there's no diagrams of any kind. It's all words, and so I like that traditional way. But I will say that if you're applying for a job as a graphic designer, then it should look nice, not a traditional one. You should be trying to find a way to use that resume almost as like a project as part of the interview process.
Right. Like a portfolio.
Exactly. This is your chance. This is like content that you're trying to get to be engaging. Use that as an opportunity. And then the last thing I'll talk about, because I get this question a lot, is just around cover letters and whether they're required or not. I'd say there's only two times where a cover letter is required, in my opinion. First one is they've asked you for a cover letter. So the second one is if you're applying to a job cold, meaning that you don't have a network contact that have reached out to you. It is not required. So that if you're applying to a job cold, I would definitely include cover letter because I think it just puts you above the pack. And I think that's really important. And then I don't think it's required if you have a lead for a job and then the person has literally told you, hey, apply to this. I'd never include a cover letter.
Yeah.
It's just like waste your time. Don't do it. Because they obviously already want to shortlist you. Right.
Yeah.
So really the only time it's required, other than when they tell you like explicitly they need one, is if you're applying to a role cold.
Yep.
That's it.
I agree.
Next question.
Are certifications worth it?
Oh my God. That depends. I think I would say if the only reason that you're getting the certification is for the job itself, then it's not worth it.
Like if it can't be used in any other role that you might apply for?
The thing is, if you want to get a certification, you should be interested in the space. In general. Like, you should get it regardless of whether you get that job or not, in my opinion. For example, I'm a Scrum Master. I have never been a Scrum Master, but I've also never worked on an Agile project before. I've, supported one, but I've never been involved in one. So, for me, I was very interested in Agile ways of working because I like to apply an Agile style to, how I manage change. Just this constant improvement, doing the retrospectives, very agile, and I like to work that way. So I did it because I was just interested in the space. I didn't do it because I wanted to be a Scrum Master, or I didn't do it because I wanted to get an agile position. I just did it because I was interested in what is agile, and I wanted to learn about it. And so that certification was worth it. Do I think you're going to get a job because you did a weekend crash course to become whatever certified? No, definitely not. I think certifications that require more effort, they're like multi-year, multi-course, that's a little bit different. But like any of the weekend crash courses like ProSci and all that stuff, whatever, it doesn't really matter. Like I am ProSci certified.
You have all of them, yeah. But I never learned from that.
I never did those because I was like, ooh, I need a job, and it said in the requirements, I need to be ProSci. I did it because everyone was talking about ProSci as a change management framework, and I was interested in being like, what's that all about? So I can form my own opinion. But I did it, and I paid for it myself, both of those certifications, because I was interested in it. So yeah, I would not do it for the job. Do it because you're interested in that field. Because there's so many times I hear, I've done all these certifications, I still can't get a job. It's like, yeah, I mean, that's just the theory. Like you've never actually done it in real life, right? So don't go in with the expectation that you're going to do a certification, you're going to get a job. Like I wouldn't do that to yourself.
And I think it can be come across as like very performative almost. If you've got all these certifications listed on your resume, are you going to actually stick to that one role, or are you going to jump and use a certification somewhere else? I think that can come across maybe to hiring managers sometimes, is if you're certified in change management and in risk management and all these different things, they're like, okay, but what are you truly passionate about? Is this role going to fit you, and are you actually going to stay here for a long time? Mm-hmm. Or do you have all these certifications because you're so busy running around doing a bunch of things that like you're just looking for literally your next job and not a career move? So I think that's something to think about too. Mm-hmm. And I think that applies in dietetics as well. There's a lot of different certifications that you can do in order to help yourself niche down to more of a specialty, because we don't technically actually have specialties within dietetics. It just depends on what area you're going to work in more long term. Yeah. And then obviously you can get certifications, but I think to your point, most of the time you're doing those certifications because you're genuinely interested in staying in that area and you just want to learn more about it so you can be a better dietitian. Mm-hmm. For example, there's a couple certifications you can do for within the sport nutrition world. There's one by the Olympic Committee. That's a really great one. You can actually officially call yourself a sport dietitian if you have that one. There's different like anthropometric or like body composition certifications you can get so that you can actually do all of that yourself with athletes. But like even thinking about me, even though I know sport is somewhere that I would love to work, I'm not going to jump and do those certifications now because A, they're expensive and they take up a lot of your time, and B, I don't think I'll be working in that area for a while. Mm-hmm. So I'd rather focus my time and effort on learning in my role right now, what's going to be relevant to me now, and maybe in the future I'll consider them.
All right, next question.
How important is networking? I hate doing it.
Yeah, everyone hates networking.
That's part of the question, but also I hate networking too.
Yeah, I feel like networking has gotten such a bad rep. I don't like the traditional sense of networking, but I think people just don't take into consideration like a lot of the things that you do on a day-to-day basis that could be considered networking. Networking is not necessarily you attending an event at night. I network on LinkedIn, and I think that is something that I think a lot of people should be doing more of. Like LinkedIn is such a great database for you being able to find people in the area that interests you or you want to learn more about. And I reach out to people and I'll go to them cold and be like, hey, listen, this is what I'm doing. I noticed that you're in this area. Like I've been super interested in kind of cracking into that space. How do I do that? And I'd love to pick your brain in just like a 30-minute coffee chat. And I think 9 out of 10 people would agree to that. I've had people do that to me, and I love to chat with people about just how I got to where I am and give them any advice that I can. I just enjoy doing that, and that in itself builds your network, whether you're the one being asked for advice or you're the one asking for advice.
Yeah, and I've done that a lot too actually as a student. Like I would reach out to private practice dietitians, sport dietitians, whatever, even like just on social media, send them a message and say, hey, I'm a dietetics student, I'm in my 3rd year at this school, whatever. Like I would really love to just have even a 15-minute conversation with you over Zoom to just learn about how you got to where you are, because you're someone I'm like aspiring to be like. And like you said, 9 out of 10 times people will say yes. I actually don't think I ever had someone say no to me. I think every person I've reached out to have said yes for just a quick, even 15-minute conversation, maybe half an hour to just say, what program did you do? It helped me a lot when it was before I was in my master's program, so I would often ask them, what program did you choose and why? Yeah, how did it help you get to where you are? So it could give me some more information into what master's program I should choose.
Yeah.
And that's also how I learned a lot about how to become a sport dietitian or how to become a private practice dietitian. And in turn, when it came to choosing my internship stuff, I actually didn't want to have any rotations in private practice because I was like, I've talked to so many private practice dietitians that I think I'm like prepared enough, and I had done a bunch of courses and like free workshops and all of that. Yeah, I think networking doesn't have to be, like you said, a quote-unquote networking event. It can be reaching out to people on social media that you followed for a long time, or finding someone you have similar interests with.
Yeah, and I think it's important to not underestimate the value that your existing network has.
Yeah.
I think you don't need to be searching to find coffee chats with people you've never met before. I think it's important to stay connected to people that you've grown a connection with in the past. And maybe they're not in a role or with a company, or they have work available that you might be able to jump into, but they might in the future. And I think I say lead with networking, lead with building human connection, and all of the other stuff will follow. Like, just don't do it because you feel like you have to do it. Do it because you enjoy it. Like, all the networking type stuff that I do, I enjoy doing. And I try to move towards the type of networking that I enjoy, which is the outreach, either with members of my existing network or new members that I'm just interested in learning more about the business that they're in. I think the other way that I do it is just try to find like speaking engagements too. So whether it's an opportunity to speak on a panel, do workshops, do training, write articles. These are my ways of going out so that people recognize my name and can reach out to me. All of these different things. So don't think about networking as just being attending an event.
Yeah, I agree. And I even think like remembering that social media is like the ultimate way to network with people. Like it's
Yeah, especially on LinkedIn. That's what it's meant for.
LinkedIn, even like Instagram or like things like that. Like finding people that you have like things in common with and following them for their content. And then you can learn so much even just through that.
Yeah.
And I think that's always been my goal of having a social media presence and putting out free content on my pages too, was to even just build my own network of people who were interested in what I had to say, so that by the time I decided I'm ready for private practice, I've got all these people who have been following me for years who value what I say already and who might be willing to say, let's actually sit down and have a proper like nutrition assessment and let's set goals together, let's work together, because I've seen the work you do as a dietitian even for free, and I see the value in that. So I think even that is like silent networking, where
exactly,
you're just putting yourself out there and attracting all the right people to you so that when you're ready, you've got a network already built.
Yeah, it's all about reputation building, and that's just what you're trying to do. All right.
So when is it time to move on?
Yeah, that's a good question.
That's the next question.
To be honest, I alluded to this earlier. I can't remember. I did get this piece of feedback or advice from somebody, one of my past mentors, and they said that there are 4 phases or 4 stages in any job that you go through. First stage is onboarding. So this is where you're like, you're green. You don't know what's going on. And you're just trying to like meet expectations. Like that's where you're at. So there's the onboarding phase. Then there's the learning phase where you're absorbing information and you're gaining a lot from the job itself. You're learning a new skill, or you're being able to refine a new skill, dive into different conversations, different types of projects, that type of thing. So that's the learning phase. Then you get into this excelling phase where you're not only doing what meets expectations, but you've extracted all that you can from the job and now you're excelling at it. And then the last phase is this mastering, where not only are you doing the job exceptionally well, but you are now starting to input things into the job that is making the whole system work better. For example, when I was in the contact center, I was an analyst, and I went through all the phases, and near the end, I started to learn Visual Basic, which is a programming language for Excel, and I used it in order to automate all of the reports that we were doing in that job.
And that's going like way above and beyond.
Way above and beyond. I remember going back to visit, like my old manager was still there 7 years ago, or 7 years no, 5 years or so after I left, and they were still using the same reports.
Same one you had made, yeah.
When you're at that stage, it's time to go.
Yeah.
Once you're starting to like input stuff into the system that makes that job or that system operate better, it's time to leave.
You're doing work that like is higher, a higher level than what you're actually just expected of.
Yeah.
It's time to go.
Because then the next stage is the depressive stage where you're just like, I'm bored out of my friggin' mind. I can't do anything else. And like I'm doing all this
extra work and I'm not getting any extra compensation.
And then you get bitter and nobody wants to hire you. So don't get to that stage.
Yeah.
You want to improve the system so that you can use those types of things on your resume to say, these are all the things I put in place in order to make it better or improve the way things were done. And that's when you're like, okay, I'm ready to move on. And I say stay loyal. Stay with your company if you can. I was very lucky with BMO. They gave me all these opportunities to try all these different things in different industries, different competencies. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it was great. And I being loyal does have its benefits. If you're not getting what you're looking for internally, then throw loyalty out the window.
You can only be loyal for so long, right? Before they're just like walking all over you, like.
Yeah, and they're all big companies. If they had to, they'll lay you off, no problem.
Yeah.
There's always a limit to loyalty.
Yeah, I think I like those like 4 stages. That's a good way of thinking about it.
Yeah.
And I think that was similar to me whenever I knew I was ready, especially when I was at the end of my career at Starbucks. I knew it was time for me to move on because I knew I was outperforming my like basic job duties and I was not getting the recognition for it. I was not getting compensated for it. I was going way above and beyond. And no matter how many conversations I was having with my manager about I'm ready to move into the next level, what do I need to do? Let's make a plan. Let's get me there. They'd always like just sidestep things or hum and haw about what to do. And I was like, okay, this is not happening. Like, and I think for me, it was also affecting my mental health a lot. Like, being in a 24-hour store when I had already said no to that, and then having to wake up at 2 a.m. to phone calls of things happening at the store. And,
yeah, it was terrible.
And it was just a lot, and I had reached my edge, and it was time to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's time to move on when you feel like you're outperforming in your role. I think is like my takeaway.
Yeah.
When you feel like you're ready to leave, it's probably long overdue at that point.
And it's interesting because like a lot of people will say, I need to spend like a year and a half in a role. And I never understood that because at the end of the day, you're applying a simple formula to very complex issues because every person is different. If it takes me 2 years to get to excelling, it might take somebody a year in that same job,
might take someone 5 years.
And so if you keep that, I can't move for another 2 years, I can't move for another whatever, assuming that your company hasn't put that requirement on you, that's different.
Yeah.
But I also think companies doing that is a mistake because if somebody doesn't want to be in the job, why are you holding them back? That sounds like a terrible idea, but whatever. But don't self-impose these things. I think at the end of the day, like I said, the worst thing that can happen is you get past that mastering phase and you get to a depressive phase where you're just like irritable and annoyed, and then you become a difficult hire, right?
Yeah. So why don't we do some final thoughts before we completely wrap up?
Yeah. So on the topic of job searching, looking for new jobs and stuff, I think we've been dropping bombs this whole time. Like there's some serious good stuff, I think. So I think those things I haven't already said would be things like be patient and don't settle. Number one. Don't ever do that. It's very hard to do.
That's a good one.
Very hard to do. I've been in the position where I almost settled. I have settled. And so I know what I'm talking about. So don't settle and be patient, honestly. I think job searching is very exhausting. So if you're exhausted and you're at a point where you're feeling like this is too much, I don't want to do this anymore, and you are in a position where you're already employed and all that kind of stuff, take a break.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like just take a break from it. Take maybe a month or 2 months. Keep networking. Keep reaching out for coffee chats and all that stuff, but don't apply to anything.
Because I also think sometimes, like, when you're applying for jobs, it sometimes takes, like, places a long time to respond, to get through all the applicants and actually just reach out even for an interview. And that happened with my current role right now, where I think I had applied to the job, like, a month before I heard anything. And I had it in my mind, I don't think I got it. That would have been, like a dream role of mine. And I kept going back to it and looking at it, and I was like, oh, man, it's been so long. But then after some time of me just being patient and waiting it out and not panicking and applying to 100 other places, they finally reached out for an interview, and, luckily everything went well and I got the role. But I think that ties in a lot, is to be patient, don't settle.
Yeah.
Especially reflecting back now and recognizing, like, this is an amazing first role for me to have. I wouldn't have changed anything.
Yeah.
There was definitely some other jobs that I had applied for before it, and I think that would have been settling for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that ties into one of your points that you wrote down here that I'm going to steal, is to ignore the qualifications that are listed and focus on what the role is and whether you think you could do a good job and apply for it. And then tying into that earlier advice that we said of tailoring your resume.
Yeah.
Like when I applied to the job I currently have, I really super tailored my resume to this role specifically, including things like critical care, working in an ICU, working in a lot of surgery rotations, like doing a lot of parenteral and enteral nutrition, were things that in this role specifically are very heavy on. But I don't think I would have necessarily called that out being, I was a dietetic intern at a hospital. They'd be like, okay, that could be anything. So I was like, let me call out the specific things that I know are going to make me excellent here. Because I know I'm ready for this kind of job, and it will be challenging, but here's why I'm good for it. Ignore the qualifications that they might say of having X number of years experience and all that, because you could get it.
Yeah.
You just got to call out your strengths for them, to really spell it out, to say, I can do it, and here's why. Bam, bam, bam.
Exactly. Yeah, I wouldn't change anything on that one. I think the other thing is, don't move for the money or the title.
Yeah.
Don't ever do that, because all of the stuff that you think that's gonna bring you happiness, and it will for 6 months. And it'll be right back to where you're like, I want the next title, I want the next pay increase. So at the end of the day, I think, and everyone, you might want to move for money for a bunch of different reasons. Things are tight and you need the money, obviously.
Fair enough, yeah.
That's fine. That's a different kind of motivation. I think if your motivation is, I need to make more money so that I can say I make 6 figures, or I can say I'm on the higher edge of this range, like all that stuff is
just for flashiness.
Yeah, and honestly, you're never gonna reach a point where you feel like enough's enough. You're gonna always want more, and it's just I don't recommend it. All that stuff is just temporary.
No. And I think a lot of people are coming around to that idea of really ensuring that they're focusing more on their happiness. I think you and I are in the generation of millennials who were raised to be like, you want the money, you want the title, like to be successful, because that's how our parents were. And that's what a lot of them did, was they only focused on their money and their title, and it had them a good long career in whatever industry they were in. But I think for our generation, having gone through even just so much with the pandemic, coming out of school, and like a whole bunch of random shit around the world, I think for us, we're recognizing how important mental health is. And like, you're only going to last so long in a job if you're only there for the money or the title. Like, you're going to burn out so fast. Your mental health's going to plummet. So is it really worth it to go for that kind of job? No. Find something that's going to give you that happy medium of feeling like you're successful, but also feeling like you're valued and you're in a role that you really like. Because it's most of your life is spent in that job.
It's very tough, right? Like, I think you always think, if I'm an analyst, I want to get into the management position. That way I can have a bunch of people doing the work that I'm doing so that I don't have to do it. And then, but you get to that job and you're like, ooh, like, this is good, but I want more responsibility. If I'm a senior manager, then I'll be at a place where I need to be. You get there and you're like, oh, like, I didn't have as much responsibility as I thought I would at this level.
Right.
It's the director that I want. That's where
now I need to move up again.
Then I get to director level and so, this is good, but it's not quite there yet. And to be honest, you're never going to get there.
Yeah.
Even the CEO has people that he or she needs to report to, and that's the shareholders and the board, right? And at the end of the day, they're not necessarily 100% in control of the business, and you're never going to be able to achieve this idea of like full and utter responsibility unless you go and become your own boss.
And even it's like
but then you got clients that are literally dictating what it is that you do and how you do it. And at the end of the day, when I say this pursuit of like money and title is meaningless, it really is, right? I can call myself whatever I want, but it doesn't change what I'm doing. And it's what I'm doing that I'm passionate about. And that's what's driving me, not the money, not the title. Like, none of that stuff is why I do what I do. Just take a look at my tax bill from this year, and you'll know it has nothing to do about the money.
Not as much fun anymore.
Yes.
But so, I think a good book, just as a side note, if that's like an area of mentality, I guess you're interested in, is The Happiness Advantage by Sean Aker.
Great book.
He talks about that a lot, about how we're all in that culture of kind of chasing the title or chasing a money, but you need to learn how to be happy, like right now in the role that you're in, and recognize how far you've come. And that's the secret to a happy life, people.
Love
just
it.
Saying.
Great way to end it.
Yeah.
Awesome. So thank you all so much for those questions.
Yeah, they were great.
I'll keep bringing them in, honestly, because I think questions that we get will help inform what our next episode will be about sometimes.
Since we're making them the week of now.
Yeah,
too.
So feel free. You can find us on social media, so on TikTok and Instagram at Reroute Reflections, or on Twitter or X at Reroute Podcast. And then, of course, if you want to email us, we also have podcast at reroutereflections.com as a way to get in contact with us. So please continue to send episode ideas and your questions. And then on Instagram, we will continue to be doing these questions ahead of every episode.
It was really successful.
Yeah, that'll be a great way to start to get some questions and give you a preview of what the next episode's going to be about.
And if you haven't already, please subscribe to whatever platform you're listening to us on. And don't forget to share the episode or the podcast with a friend.
Yeah, honestly.
Yeah.
It's all about networking, right?
Yeah,
so reach out to them and be like, hey, I was thinking about you when I was listening to the podcast. You should go check them out. Oh, and by the way, do you want to set up some time for a coffee chat?
Yeah.
You're welcome, guys.
Great way to do it.
All right. Thank you all for listening again. And remember, don't be afraid to reroute.
Bye.
Bye.